At the Supreme Court today, an historic upheaval. In a sweeping ruling that overturned a half a century of precedents, 5 justices ended the right of American women to choose abortion under the Constitution.
To an abortion.
The Supreme Court has essentially reshaped American life.
It's going to be legal chaos.
Where abortion is legal in about half the states, illegal in half the states.
Hey guys, it's me, James, with This Beautiful Crazy Life. Welcome to the channel. If you're not sure what we do here, well, we talk about theology, politics, religion, everything from a Christian world view. And sometimes I do video essays, and sometimes I do commentaries on what's going on in the world. And sometimes I take about non-religious things as well too. But today we're having something a little different. We're doing an interview. It's actually the first interview for this channel. And we're talking with 2 pro-choice Christians. That's right, I said it, pro-choice Christians. And for some of you, that sounds like a complete contradiction, because if you look at this poll here, besides the Mormons, evangelical Christians are pretty opposed to abortion at some of the highest numbers compared to all other religious groups out there. And so to be a pro-choice Christian is to put you in a minority. And I just want to talk about that. First off, this isn't a debate. This is simply to hear what someone's saying. Not to really necessarily change their minds, but to put this conversation out there. And so I just ask people to please be kind in the comments. I know the internet's a pretty wild place, and if you hold for this whole interview, guess what? I'll give you a special treat, which is basically me giving you my opinion, which is definitely a special treat. So check out the interview.
Okay.
All right, so if you guys could introduce yourselves.
I'm Katie.
And I am Grant.
And how long you guys have been married for?
About 3 years now.
Yes.
Nice. That's a long time, kind of, right?
Somewhat-ish, I guess.
Maybe in our culture a little bit, since relationships don't seem to last very long.
I guess you're right on that part.
So we're here to talk about, you guys know there's a big news from the Supreme Court. Roe v. Wade was just overturned. Now abortion is up to the states, and we're seeing a lot of laws come out, and there's a lot of discussion. And typically how most people understand this issue, it's kind of split in half, even if that's not really true. But you have one group of people who are considered pro-choice, who believe that abortion rights should be legal, and that this should just be between a woman and her doctor. And then on the other side, you have the pro-life movement, who ranges quite a bit. You have people who would be part of what's called the abolish movement, who believe no abortion ever. There's no reason to ever have an abortion. And then you have other people who, will say, we don't want abortion legal, maybe in very, very few cases. And I just want to know, you guys, what's your stance on that?
You want to start off?
Yeah, you can.
So probably if you had asked me that question 5-8 years ago, I would have said that I was pro-life. But that has changed in the last couple of years since then. I happen to have a handful of friends who have had I'm going to mispronounce it, but ectopic pregnancies, and who would have died if they hadn't received the medical care considered as abortion. And for 2 of those girls, they were mothers already. And so I just have such a hard time with the fact that people would be okay with the fact that that particular friend and their second child would have died, leaving the other kids motherless to begin with. But so I mean, partially views have changed because of that. I've said a lot of times that when I got married to him, I had a lot of black and white thinking, and that once we started talking about these big topics and other things, that I've started to realize that life is not quite as black and white as a lot of people like to see it. A lot of it is just kind of grayish, and which is really hard when you're trying to look at Bible verses that say things like anyone who takes an innocent life is subject to all this judgment and things like that. But it's it's just something that there's a lot of different emotional thoughts on, but I think for now I've settled on that I am pro-choice, simply because, you know, it's not my life. It's someone else's life, and, you know, yeah, they may have made some poor decisions or something might have happened, but it's not my business, is kind of where I've landed for now, at least.
Yeah. And what about you, Grant? How did you consider yourself pro-choice, or?
Yeah, I consider myself pro-choice. Like, there's just a lot of, what's the right word for it? That Christians put a lot of our own beliefs on everyone else. That, like, the majority of the U.S. does not consider themselves Christian, so why are we putting all of this on them? And while, like, it can be sad for a lot of times that people do get an abortion for certain reasons, but, like, we don't know what their position, like, what their point in life is, and having, like, to force those people to have a child, and if they can't, like, care for them financially or their time, or if they're forced to bring them to term and they're kind of resentful of that child growing up, like that, why would you want to put a child through that? And
There's just so many, like, there's so many factors that that go into it.
And just, like, there's the whole, like, we have in our society just so much, like, there's childcare is so expensive. There's just so many things that we could do, like, once a child is born, to help everyone. Because if we just, like, had better education and, like, healthcare for everyone, you could help probably reduce the amount of kids that are born that, like, would probably, or, like,
Weren't wanted.
Yeah, weren't wanted, or just, like, could potentially reduce abortion count.
I think that a lot of other countries have their act together in that sense, like, because they have universal health care and childcare is way more accessible. Like, it's not something that they have to pay as much as we do. The parents are more supported in that way. When I was doing my undergraduate degree, I had to study the educational system in Finland, and not only does Finland have better testing scores than any other, like, American state or as a country as a whole, but they take better care of their parents, both medically and professionally, because they have up to a year of paid maternity leave if they want to take that, and it's encouraged for them to do that. And then in addition, preschool starts as young as, like, 2 years old, so that the parents can drop their kids off for, like, a half day and work part-time if they need to. So I do feel like if we could move, if we as Americans, I guess, could move towards something like that a little bit more, I don't know if my views might shift again, but I just think that here in the States we do a pretty crap job of taking care of our mothers once they get pregnant, and then also postpartum, because the fact that most people only get 6 weeks of leave, and sometimes it's not even paid,
And there's no guaranteed leave.
There's no guarantee. Like, the job that I was at while I was pregnant, they told me that I could have 2 weeks paid leave, and then I could take up to 6 weeks if I wanted to. And that's basically when I decided that I was going to leave my position there, because I was just like, okay, I can see how much you value me, and because we have his income as well, and mine wasn't needed, it was like, okay, that's an easy decision. So, like, when people talk about abortion, what I think that they lack to realize a lot of the time is that there's so much that goes into it. Like, and then just from my own, like, personal experience, I ended up having to have an emergency C-section, and, you know, it was pretty traumatic, and you know, everything ended up fine, but it was incredibly scary, and 4 months later had to have an additional surgery as well, and was just so thankful that Grant has the job that he has and the medical benefits that we have. we didn't have to pay as much as other people might have. And yes, it was somewhat of a hardship to pay for them, but like it wasn't like a, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Are we going to be able to feed ourselves? Like, so when parents are forced to live under that kind of stress of thinking, am I going to be able to afford housing and safe foods and all that kind of stuff, it takes away from the parenting aspect of things, which could make them question, why did I become a parent to begin with? Oh yeah, because I didn't really have a choice. Forced birth was the only option at the time. Sorry, I'm talking.
No, you're good.
I want your thoughts.
More thoughts.
Well, so Katie, she explained how she came to her decision, her value change. How about you? How did you come to this conclusion?
Good question.
Would you say that you've had that stance since we met / before we met?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably just like majority of my adulthood. I don't really know exactly like when it like I was like, oh, this is what I like. I probably just majority of my life, because it's just like, yeah, I grew up in the church, but like I just viewed it as more like it's that we're supposed to love everyone, like, and like no matter what you do, you're forgiven. So
I'm gonna talk about the sin thing that we were.
yeah, I was gonna get to that.
Okay.
And so it's just like, okay, great, they did something bad. Why are we trying to persecute all these people? And it kind of brings around to like how sin is just in, like, I think a lot of people conflate sin with like something that is against the law. There's different levels of like punishment for breaking the law versus sin. It's just sin. You are like, it's something that separates you from God. You can't not get anywhere closer to God for like doing a small sin. And so like you just like lying or cheating at like something small is just as bad as killing someone, but you can ask for forgiveness. So it's like, why are we so worked up or even just fixated on sin as Christians when the whole message is just to forgive, love everyone? And so you have all these people that are like constantly like berating people for sinning and saying that they're like going to die and go to hell, when it's just like, no, that's not at all the message God, Jesus and God has told us to do. So like, just love these people, show them love, and if you do that, like, they can like just bring them over, and like then they can have a conversation with God and see if that's something that they still want to do, or just have that change of life.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that video. We're going to stop it right here for now. This will be part 1. Part 2 will come out pretty soon here. Maybe it'll be today, tomorrow, or the next day once I get the editing done. But I just wanted to bring up a couple points with our conversation with Grant and Katie. What I want to talk about really is, what is the goal of the pro-choice and pro-life movement? And it seems to change a lot in the pro-choice movement. I was recently at a rally, one of their pro-choice protests, and so much of it was that abortion is health care, which is a little different than how Democratic politicians would say in the past, which would be like, we want abortions to be safe and rare. Now it's just that abortion is just a normal thing that people do as a way to get health care. And for a lot of pro-life people, well, most of them, they want the baby to live. And maybe for a few exceptions here and there, abortion is seen to be a rare thing. The big problem, though, I think comes from is that 1, what's the definition of a baby? 2, what's the role of government and morality? And 3, how should the government participate in the lives of families and individuals? And that's a big thing. Now, for this idea of morality, I personally think that the government has a role to promote certain morals. If you look at this list here of countries with the lowest abortion rates, all these countries, I did a lot of research on this. Well, not a lot, I read a few articles, but they all ban abortion, have low abortion rates. But it's also true that countries with a much more robust healthcare, public healthcare system or public welfare system of some sort, where the government provides things like maternal and paternal care, healthcare, childcare, at either a discounted rate or funded through taxes, so it's free out of your pocket, they do have less levels of poverty in many of those countries, such as Norway or Sweden. Then you have other countries like Canada, which is pretty similar to us because they have a pretty, even though they have like a healthcare system, it's, I heard it's a mixed bag and it's not very well funded, any of that, or the NHS in England. So these things are very, very complicated depending on how you view it. And for me personally, I'm pro-choice. I think abortion should be super, super rare because I do think maybe, I don't know, I heard that story of that 10-year-old that got unfortunately raped, and man, I just don't even know how to really process that. And part of me is like, maybe abortion makes sense. I don't know all the time. I know I'm going to get a lot of heat from that one from Christians, especially in the abolish movement there. But in general, I am pro-life. I think life's so important. I think we should be able to encourage families and people to keep their children. But I also think government has a role. I've seen what's going on in Sri Lanka when the government mismanages their economy so badly, people end up overthrowing the government there. Actually, French and the Russians about their wonderful history. And so I do think the government has a role to play, but I know a lot of pro-life people do not agree with me on that. But I think, having things like a universal healthcare system or affordable healthcare system with good access and people to go to, having some type of maternity or paternity leave, having, subsidies can be a good thing. Instead of us maybe subsidizing oil companies all the time, maybe we should subsidize every regular day people. Yes, I'm getting political, so sorry, but that's just my view on it. But that, I think, is where the divide is. That's the things that stood out to me the most in that conversation. So there was probably a lot said. I'm sure I'm missing some things that someone will point out. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to see part 2, like and subscribe. Anyway, check out one of my other videos. I think you'll like them. Stay blessed.